Hello there and welcome back to Normal Guy Games. So this time around I am doing another Black Scorpion miniature for, what I originally purchased them for was the Silver Bayonet. And I'm going to finish off the rest of my team, my war band. And this time we're doing the junior officer. And we're going to get right to it. So I hope you enjoy. So to start off with, what I used here was, this is Uniform Gray Primer by the Army Painter, and as I said on my last video, this is the last time that I'm going to use any kind of Army Painter products, honestly. I mean, their tools are fine, but I did have problems with their primer, and as you can see here, it kind of is pulling away from the paint is pulling away from the primer. And I've experienced this a couple of times, and I did shake the crap out of the can, and I had thought that when I had this problem last time, maybe it was just something on the miniature, but this is a whole different set of miniatures. You know, the first time around it was my Kriegsman. So anyway, I am using Monument Hobbies for the blue here. I used Black Templar for the boots. Here I'm using, it was Payne's Gray is what I used for the undercoat. And for the coat itself, what I'm using is the Dark Jade from Monument Hobbies. Now, I'm just using straight up paint for this. I'm not mixing them with anything yet. They cover really well. I did have a couple of issues with pulling away on the coat, just like I did with the undercoat there, and but in the end, it looks dark enough to where it's, you know, it turns out it dries a lot darker than you would think. So what I did from there is I mixed just a little bit of white blue, which is again Monument Hobbies, into that Dark Jade to create a highlight color for the topmost, the raised edges, the pockets, the edges of the coat, the tops of the sleeves, you know, the top of the back there. Anything that would be upward facing and catch the light is where you want to do that extra highlight. Now, I just did one round of highlights, and I did kind of a very stark highlight for this. Most of the time what I'll do is I will do a very progressive highlight with just a little bit of color mixed in, and I'll mix a little more and a little more, and I'll go from there. In this particular instance, I just kind of wanted to get it to the point where it was good for the table. Now, moving on here, what I'm doing here is I'm painting up the wood grain, and for that I used Contrast Wildwood, and that is only for the pistols and the bottom sides of the pistols where they would be wood. So the next stage is the flesh, and I used the beige red from Monument Hobbies for this. I've said this before, but I'm really enjoying my Monument Hobbies paints, and I do plan on some point soon getting more of them. So far, so good with what I have. So moving on from that beige red, the first thing I wanted to try is I wanted to maybe try putting a yellow on here for the edges of the coat, for the decorations of the fluting and the filigree. But you know, honestly, as it was drying and as I continued, I just didn't like the way it looked. But we'll move on to what I did about that. So moving on there, the next thing I did was I used my Balatheon chitin for the frills of his shirt and for any other white details. And then I moved on to the hat. Now I used Gargax Sewer for this because I really like it's kind of a darkish, lightish, it's like a mid-tone brown once it dries. Now, because this was on the Uniform Gray, it did dry a little darker than I initially wanted it to, but it still turned out looking pretty good, honestly. Now, moving on here, I painted up as you can see, his hair, and for that I used snakebite leather, I believe. And moving on to the rest of his coat and the rest of the details here, the next thing I did was I painted the details on the guns, and that would be any kind of metallic parts like the trigger, the barrels, any kind of metallics he would have on there, except for the buttons on his jacket. Buttons on his jacket I decided to do in a different color. So and for this I used just regular old lead belcher. Now the buttons on his jacket I decided to do in Retributor armor to make them kind of shine a little bit, and I think that turned out pretty well. Now he's wearing some sort of goggles or glasses or something, and I actually just used Abaddon black for that, and then I went back and touched up the face afterward. Now moving on to the red, his hair tie, which I originally was going to paint that same yellow, I just went ahead and painted that with Blood Angels red, and I actually went back and I hit those with Mephiston red as well. Now I did take that Mephiston red and I decided to go ahead and cover the yellow with that red, and I think the red kind of looks a little bit better. It gives kind of a starker contrast. And the thing is, I was referring to my color wheel, and blue-green, which is kind of what that jade color is, the opposite of that is kind of a red-orange. So I didn't have a red-orange that I liked, so I decided to do any of the trimming and all of that in just a bright red instead. Now for his skin, I did go back with Reichland Flesh shade, and I did all of his skin in that. And instead of doing the whole model in Agrax Earthshade, what I did is I picked out a few places where I thought that the shadows would be the most prominent. That would be the folds in the coat, underneath the pockets, any places where there would be a little more shadow. Now to finish it off, of course, I am using the Sterling Battlemire for the base, and then I'm going to go back after that and throw a couple of tufts on there and just kind of like dry brush it up. But as you'll see here in the next scene, I think it turned out pretty good. So anyway, if you like what you've seen here, please like and subscribe, drop me a message, whatnot, and we will definitely see you on the next video. Thank you very much.